everyone, and welcome to the Royal Armouries. My name is India. You may or may not have already seen me today. I am a member of the live interpretation team. What that essentially means is it's my job to bring history to life for you and to bring to life some of the wonderful items that we have in our collection. More specifically, in this case, the items that you will find over past the diorama of Ashford. I'll speak a bit about that at the very end. This talk is heavily inspired by a grave known as the Birka warrior. This grave was found in Birka, Sweden, and amongst many other graves, it was a grave of particular interest because of the grave goods therein. They were very, very high status items. So the skeleton was buried alongside 2 shields, a spear, a sword, a bow with armour-piercing arrows, and alongside 2 horses, a mare and a stallion. And because originally they would have been sat up in the grave on a seat, on their lap was a game set and pieces, like chess. In Norse, it's known as heffeltaffel. Now, based on this discovery, it was quickly labelled as the grave of a male warrior who went off and did many, many great battles and probably led a huge army. Fast forward somewhat to the 21st century, and archaeologists and historians are looking a lot closer at this skeleton, and they're very puzzled because the femur, the hip bones of the skeleton, are larger than that of the normal male. So they scraped off a piece of DNA and they had a closer look, and they were very surprised to discover that it was the skeleton of a woman. Now, this caused a huge amount of controversy within the archaeological community. People very split on the idea of female Viking warriors, or more specifically in this case, shield-maidens. Now, I'm going to quickly address a kind of myth. There wasn't a huge army of women as much as I would like there to be. Like you see in the Viking series, Vikings, led by Lagertha. No, that wasn't the case. But there is enough evidence to show that there were some women, potentially, who fought alongside the men as well. So I've put together a fictional story about a shield maiden called Ebba. And she is gathered around with her kinsfolk by a fire. I'm warning you now, I'm about to do some acting for you. So if you don't like that, don't feel like you have to stay. But this is based off of a lot of research that I have done. So some aspects of it, including some of the Icelandic Norse and Icelandic poetry and stories, have influenced this story. So our story takes place on the shorelines of Northumbria. Imagine in your mind's eye, there's lovely sandy dunes. I have a very limited budget. And then the Vikings have just fought a very bloody battle, and they have won. So Ebba is gathered around a big fire with her kinsfolk, that's you guys, and she is discussing the battle that has just taken place and what has led her to be here with you. Now, there is going to be a moment in which you can join in. You will hear me say the word skål. Skål means cheers. So if you do feel so inclined to shout skål back to me, I'd really appreciate it. Otherwise, there is just this awkward moment of silence. Okay. Oh. Come, Filaki, let us drink! Oh, not yet. Later. It's okay, you're very keen. I like that. Let's start again. Oh, don't look so sour. It's true. Today, we lost many. But we will not weep for them. The Nornir spin the threads of all our fates. And I know that those we have lost will now be feasting and drinking in Valhall. And this great battle, it will be immortalized by the scouts for years to come. How do I know this? It's true. I too had begun to doubt our gods. Years of sickness and starvation and the ceaseless disputes between clans. And upon arriving here, on England's shores, I learnt of a new god, a Christian god, one which they all worship united. And if you look around, the land, it is rich and fertile. So perhaps all of our tributes to the old gods have fallen on deaf ears. But today, Odin himself was with us. I saw his two ravens with my own eyes. They were perched upon a withered tree, and their black eyes were scanning over the grasslands, and their movements were mirrored, as if one had been reflected on water. But you're not probably wondering, why am I here? Why do I seek out the clash of arms instead of the arms' embrace, like others of my sex? When I was born, my mother and father were concerned that I was too weak and too sickly, that I wouldn't have survived the winter. We prayed. They prayed to the goddess Freya, and despite the opinion of most that I should just be left outside for dead, my mother and father insisted that I would be raised alongside my brothers, Gunnar and Leif. And they enjoyed nothing more than putting me through my paces. They spared me nothing. And my father, Frodo, used to say, "My children, they are like iron ingots. They are molded by fire and homes." He was a reputed swordsmith, respected by all, and it was through him and my brothers that I quickly learned how to defend myself. I was shown how to use a sword and a spear and a bow. And as you can imagine, I found it far more interesting than weaving or gathering berries. But let me tell you the story of my 13th summer, and then you will understand how I came to be here. Young Stirling, my great leader, had assembled 3 longships, each with a crew of 41, to seek out what lied beyond the water. We had heard through trade that these other clans, they were returning with riches from unknown lands. And so with all able-bodied men out to sea, my father and brother included, we were left to defend and maintain the settlement. And my first taste of blood was not so long after. Word had reached us that a Danish army was once again travelling north across the sea, and they were pillaging local towns. An attack on us was imminent. And so Istrid, the wife of our now absent leader, she assembled together women, all of fighting age, me among them, and we put together a collection of the finest food and drink. It truly was a feast fit for Thor himself, and we rode out and we met with the Danish army, and utterly beguiled by our very warm greeting. The Danish army gorged themselves that night, drinking and feasting up greedily on everything we had to offer. And one by one, with all of their bellies full, and their heads all hazy from the mead, they one by one passed into a honey-soaked stupor. And as the fires began to dwindle down into embers, as silently as a wolf stalks its prey, we gathered up all of their weapons. And we killed them as they slept! This was a good thing! It was not cowardice! Yes! Sometimes deception is necessary to protect your family, and Istrid, she was not a coward. She was cunning. She knew that we never would have survived fighting them head on. The risk was far too great. And it was here I learnt my very first lesson. Defeat your enemy in the field before they reach your house. And I could not wait to tell my father and brothers we had achieved, once they had all been away weeping. But it was a full season before we saw the sails of their longships reappear on the horizon, and all of their faces were weathered from the sea. And my youngest brother, Gunnar, his face was now sprouting all of this patchy fluff, which he had attempted to braid. He was very, very proud of it, but I have seen more hair on a rooster's knee. I pulled him in close and I embraced him. He was now a dringir. He was no longer a little boy with his face all stained with berries that he'd stolen from my basket. He was now a man, and he followed after my eldest brother Leif with adoration, as anyone here would. Leif, he was a bull of a man. He took after my father. He had these piercing blue eyes set behind his permanently furrowed brow, and this impressive mane of brown hair. And that first night, when they had all returned from going Viking, we all gathered in the longhouse, and we eagerly listened as they told us the stories of their journey and started to distribute out all of the wealth that they had acquired. And it was that first night, it lit a fire inside of me, a fire that still burns to this day. And my next trial came soon enough. I am now 19, and we have heard that a clan from the south, their leader, Ulf Boarslayer, was claiming ownerships over our land. And I remember how bitterly cold that morning felt. And as this red winter sun rose, resolute, I joined the men on their march. I was not going to be denied by my father and brothers who said that I could not accompany them. I disguised myself in mail and a helmet, and I joined them on their march against Ulf. And our footsteps crunched underfoot, and there was this blanket of frost which covered everything. And as we reached the top of this giant hill, we looked down, and there was Ulf's men waiting for us. They all had their shields locked together, and their roars carried up on the wind towards us. But Styrbjörn, my leader, he simply, silently drew his sword, and we advanced down the hillside. Spears and arrows ripped through the air, accompanied by the thundering of feet as we charged down the hillside. And as we reached the very base of the hill, our shields met theirs. And despite our very swift descent downwards, Ulf's men stood steadfast. We now had to clumsily maneuver our swords and our spears through the gaps, seeking out the vulnerable. But Ulf's men did not weaken. They began to push us back, and it was here, through this mass of tangled limbs, I heard my leader cry out over the din, "Spin Viking!" Those of us now who were not trapped in by bodies, we rallied backwards, and we formed the arrowhead formation, the boar's tooth. We got back our strength, and we charged forward. We pushed past our own men, and we split open the barricade of their shields. It was like water breaching a dam. We burst forward. But what greeted me on the other side was a warrior as big and as broad as a bear. He was draped in furs. I advanced towards him, shooing down those who were in my way. As I drew closer, I noticed that he began to bite on the top of his shield. And he started howling like a dog, howling like a dog in the moon, his breath forming clouds over his lips. But I celebrated my victory too early, and filled with fury, he kicked me so hard, it stole the wind from my lungs, and last I knew, I was on the ground. I had lost my sword, and as I rolled over, this berserker was now stood over me, his chin and his fur all sticky with blood. He pushed his boots down onto my shield, strapping me, pinning me below. I could not move, and I could smell the stench of the lost meal in his breath as he was roaring at me, growling, baring all of his remaining teeth. And it was here, on this cold wet ground, that I remembered something. This could have been my fate. A sickly infant, just left outside in the cold to perish. And a white heat rose in my chest. No! If this was going to be my last day on Midgard, I was going to earn my place in Odin's hall. I squirmed beneath me, reached for my seax from its scabbard, and I lodged it into his leg. He let out a cry and began to tumble backwards, clutching at the handle which was protruding from his knee. I got to my feet, and I smashed him with my sail! Until he was still. And as I looked around, Ulf's men were fleeing, and Ulf, upon seeing this reddened valley littered with the corpses of his men, that Irgi ran from the battlefield like a squealing pig. We had won. We had driven them back. But, as all of you here know, victory does sometimes come at a cost. And as we began to search this valley of our dead and our... I found my brother Gunnar. I brought him closer towards me, but he was struggling for air. He had these little red bubbles rising to his lips. I quickly took off my helmet and then pulled him in close towards me. And the look on his face, it suddenly changed. And he looked up at me and he had this small smile. Oh, it was the smallest smile. And then he was gone. This was where Leif found me, on the hillside, cradling Gunnar. And his face, it was a wash of pain and shock, but also pride. And as we gathered up our dead and our wounded and we returned back to the settlement, it was here I learned that my father had also been gravely injured. He later died of a fever. But Styrbjörn, he had overheard what I had done on the battlefield, and he oversaw the burial of both my father and brother. And because he had learned of my deeds, he summoned me into his confidence and entrusted me with the defense of our lands here in Birka, and encouraged me to lead the men and go and seek out lands new. So that is why I am here. You know, I never envisioned myself as a leader of men. And I know that like Gunnar and like my father, my days are numbered. But I know that I belong here. So join me now. Let us celebrate our victory. And let us toast our glorious dead. They will all be waiting for us in Valhall. Skål! Skål! Thank Thank you very much. So amazingly at the end there. It always makes me feel good when people shout it back to me. As I've said, it was a fictional story put together by a lot of research that I've done about women who existed in Icelandic literature. So the bit about the women killing the men in their sleep, yeah, I can't claim that one, that wasn't mine. That is Blenda of Smaland, and she existed in the Icelandic Sagas and was potentially a real woman. So if you are interested in seeing our Viking collection, we do have it. It's kind of tucked away in that little tunnel in a small, dimly lit cabinet. You can see some Danish axes, some Frankish swords, and some other bits and pieces like the pioneer helmet, which there is only 4 in the country, and we're very lucky to have one of them. But now, if you would like to, you can come up towards the stage and you can ask me as many questions as you like about the Vikings, and I will try to answer in the best of my ability. You can ask me about who I am, if you would like, but more excitingly, if you would like to hold on to a sword, you are more than welcome to, and you can have pictures. I will ask, please. I know you're really inspired now to be Viking warriors. Please don't show me, yeah? Just keep the blade always face up towards the sky. Don't stick it in anyone's nose. Looking at you guys, okay? And you can hold on to the shield and you can try on the helmet. The helmet is quite heavy, and unfortunately it isn't a one-size-fits-all, so please don't be upset if it doesn't fit you. But it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much again for listening, and enjoy the rest of your day.